The library clock struck 10 p.m. as Amara Okafor gathered her books, her eyes burning from hours of studying. Final exams were 2 weeks away, and she couldn't afford anything less than excellent grades. Her scholarship depended on it, and her scholarship was everything. Her only escape from the poverty that had defined her childhood in Enugu. The University of Lagos campus was quiet as she walked back to her dormitory. Street lights cast long shadows across the pathways, and the distant sound of music from a student party drifted through the warm Lagos night. Amara smiled to herself, thinking about her roommate Chidinma, who had probably gone to that party. Chidinma was always the social one, while Amara buried herself in books. They were an unlikely pair. Chidinma came from money. Her father was a successful businessman in Port Harcourt, but she never made Amara feel less than. They had become like sisters over the past 3 years, sharing everything from midnight snacks to dreams about their futures. As Amara approached their apartment building, she noticed the door to their ground-floor unit was slightly ajar. Strange. Chidinma was usually careful about locking up. A knot of anxiety formed in Amara's stomach as she pushed the door open slowly. "Chidinma, are you home?" The lights were on, but there was no response. Amara stepped inside, and her textbooks crashed to the floor. Chidinma lay motionless on the living room carpet, her white dress stained crimson, her eyes frozen in a permanent expression of terror. Blood pooled around her body, seeping into the cheap rug they had bought together at Balogun Market. Standing over her, breathing heavily with a bloodied knife in his trembling hand, was Tabena Okoro. Amara knew who he was. Everyone on campus knew Senator Okoro's son, the arrogant boy who drove luxury cars, threw money around like confetti, and believed rules didn't apply to him. He had been pursuing Chidinma for months, showing up uninvited, sending expensive gifts she kept refusing. Chidinma had complained about his obsessive behavior just last week. Time seemed to freeze as their eyes met. Tabena's face shifted from shock to panic to something far more calculating. His expensive watch glinted under the fluorescent light as he looked from the knife in his hand to Amara, then back to Chidinma's body. "You," he whispered, his voice shaking but his eyes hardening with resolve. "You did this." "What?" "No, I just walked in. You killed her." Amara's voice rose to a scream as the horror of the scene crashed over her. She reached for her phone, but Tabena was faster. He lunged forward, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. The knife clattered to the floor as he wrestled the phone from her grasp and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. "Listen to me very carefully," Tabena hissed, his breath hot against her face. "My father is Senator Okoro. Do you understand what that means? He owns the city. He owns the police, the judges, everyone who matters. No one will believe you, a poor scholarship girl from nowhere, over me." Amara struggled against his grip, tears streaming down her face. "Let me go. Somebody help. He killed her. He killed Chidinma." But the building was nearly empty, most students still out enjoying their Saturday night. Tabena pressed his hand over her mouth, silencing her screams. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice cold and methodical now, the initial panic replaced by the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences. "You were jealous of Chidinma. She had everything you didn't: money, beauty, options. You too fought, and you killed her in a rage. That's the story. And if you try to say otherwise, I will make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life." He released her suddenly, and Amara stumbled backward, her shoulder hitting the wall. She watched in horror as Tabena pulled out his phone and made a call. "Father, there's been a situation. I need your help immediately. Send Adekunle and the others to my location. And Father, make sure they bring everything we discussed for emergency protocols." Within 20 minutes, the apartment was swarming with people. But these weren't ordinary police officers responding to a murder scene. These were Senator Okoro's personal security team, along with carefully selected officers on his payroll. Amara tried to explain what happened, but no one listened. She watched in disbelief as they planted evidence, pressing her fingerprints on the knife, placing her scarf near Chidinma's body, photographing shoe prints they claimed matched hers. Tabena had changed his clothes. His bloodied shirt disappeared into a black bag that was quickly carried away. By the time the official police arrived, the scene had been staged perfectly. Tabena, now playing the role of traumatized witness, gave a tearful statement about how he had come to visit Chidinma and found Amara standing over the body, knife in hand. "I tried to stop her, but she's strong," he lied smoothly, showing scratches on his arm that he had inflicted on himself. "She attacked me too when I tried to help Chidinma. I'm lucky to be alive." "No, that's not true. He's lying. He killed her. I saw him." Amara screamed as handcuffs clicked around her wrists, but her protests fell on deaf ears. She was shoved into a police van, still wearing her library clothes, still clutching the student ID card that represented everything she had worked so hard to achieve. As the van pulled away, she caught one last glimpse of Tabena through the window. He stood under a streetlight, watching her departure with cold, emotionless eyes. Then he pulled out his phone and smiled. The girl from nowhere had just become convenient collateral damage in the life of a boy who believed himself untouchable. That night, in a cold holding cell that smelled of urine and despair, Amara curled up on a thin mattress and wept for a friend, for her future, and for the justice that seemed already lost before the fight had even begun. But she made a promise to herself and to Chidinma's memory. She would never stop fighting, no matter how powerful Senator Okoro was. No matter how long it took, the truth would come out. She walked into her own apartment and found her roommate dead, with the senator's son standing over the body. Now she's being arrested for a murder he committed. This is just the beginning of a nightmare. If you're already feeling the rage at this injustice, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion for the most powerful African stories. Drop a comment. What would you do if you're framed by someone powerful? Next chapter takes you into the courtroom where her mother will beseech the senator for mercy, and he will refuse. You need to see this. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching AfricanTales by Zion, where every story grips your soul. 3 months later, Amara sat in the Lagos High Court, wearing an orange prison uniform that hung loosely on her now thin frame. The holding cell diet and sleepless nights filled with nightmares had transformed her from a vibrant young woman into a hollow-eyed shadow. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the gallery, cameras flashing despite the judge's orders for decorum. This was the trial of the year. A poor scholarship student accused of murdering her wealthy roommate in a fit of jealous rage. The media had already convicted her, with headlines screaming, "Envious village girl kills socialite roommate," and "Betrayal in the dorm, when poverty breeds murder." Amara's parents sat in the back row, her mother's weathered face drawn with anguish, her father's callous hands gripping a worn Bible. They had sold their small plot of land to hire a lawyer, only to discover that every competent attorney in Lagos had mysteriously become unavailable or quoted fees they could never afford. They ended up with Barrister Okonkwo, a court-appointed defender who seemed more interested in his phone than in his client's case. Across the aisle, Senator Okoro sat like royalty in an expensive agbada, surrounded by his entourage. Tabena sat beside him, dressed in a somber suit, playing the part of the traumatized witness to perfection. The prosecution's case was devastating. They presented the knife with Amara's fingerprints, the scarf found near the body, and witness after witness, all paid by Senator Okoro, who testified to seeing Amara behave strangely and jealously around Chidinma, a girl from their dormitory, who had received a mysterious scholarship for her testimony, claimed she heard Amara threaten Chidinma. She said, "One day you'll regret having everything I don't have. I heard it with my own ears." It was a lie, but it sounded convincing. The university security guard, whose daughter suddenly got admission into a prestigious school, testified that he saw Amara return to the dormitory at the estimated time of death, walking quickly and looking nervous. The medical examiner, whose gambling debts mysteriously disappeared, confirmed that the wounds matched the knife found with Amara's prints. Barrister Okonkwo's defense was pathetically weak. He called no expert witnesses, conducted no independent investigation, and his cross-examinations were half-hearted at best. Amara suspected he too had been bought, or at least intimidated into incompetence. When Amara finally took the stand to tell her story, her voice shook with emotion as she recounted what really happened. She described Tabena's obsessive pursuit of Chidinma, the night she walked in on him standing over the body, his threats, and the elaborate frame-up. But the prosecutor tore into her testimony like a predator. "Miss Okafor, isn't it true that you resented your roommate's wealth?" "No, I love Chidinma like a sister." "Isn't it true that you borrowed money from her regularly?" "She offered to help me sometimes, but—" "Yes or no, Miss Okafor, did you take money from her?" "Yes, but she wanted to help." "And isn't it true that on the night of the murder, you had been drinking?" "I wasn't drinking. I was at the library studying." "Can anyone verify that? Did anyone see you there after 9 o'clock?" Amara's heart sank. The library had been nearly empty that late. I don't think so. So you have no alibi for the time of death. How convenient." The prosecutor paced before the jury, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain. "Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant wants you to believe that Tabena Okoro, a respected student from a distinguished family, would commit such a heinous crime. She provides no evidence, only wild accusations against a young man whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time, witnessing her violence." When Tabena took the stand, he delivered a performance worthy of an award. His voice broke at strategic moments. He wiped away tears as he described trying to save Chidinma and the horror of seeing Amara with a knife. He spoke about his friendship with Chidinma and his shock and disbelief that Amara could do such a thing. "She seemed like such a nice girl," Tabena said, looking directly at the jury with practiced sincerity. "I never would have suspected. But jealousy is a powerful poison." Amara wanted to scream, to rush the witness stand, to make them all see the truth. But her hands were cuffed to the defendant's table, and her voice was powerless against the machine of corruption grinding her into dust. The trial lasted only 2 weeks. Senator Okoro had ensured it moved quickly before any real investigation could complicate his son's narrative. On the final day, the judge, Justice Adebayo, who had recently purchased a new home in Banana Island that no one questioned, delivered his verdict with barely concealed impatience. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, this court finds the defendant, Amara Okafor, guilty of murder in the first degree. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. The gavel struck like a death knell. The courtroom erupted. Amara's mother let out a wail that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. She collapsed in her husband's arms, but then, with a strength born of desperate love, she broke free and rushed towards Senator Okoro, who was already rising to leave. "Please, sir, please." She fell to her knees before him, her hands clasped in supplication. "My daughter is innocent. She is all I have. In the name of God, in the name of your own children, please help her. Please, I beg you." The entire courtroom fell silent, watching the heartbreaking scene. Senator Okoro looked down at the weeping mother with an expression of cold contempt. For a moment, it seemed he might speak, might show some flicker of humanity. Instead, he stepped back, as if her poverty might contaminate his expensive shoes. "Remove this woman," he said quietly to his security detail. "Sir, please. My daughter didn't do this. Your son." I said, "Remove her." 2 large men pulled Amara's mother away as she sobbed and pleaded. Her husband stood frozen, tears streaming silently down his weathered face, his Bible clutched to his chest. The weight of powerlessness crushed him visibly as he watched his world collapse. As the guards prepared to escort Amara back to prison, she turned one last time to her parents. Her mother was still wailing, reaching out for her with desperate hands. Her father met her eyes, and in his gaze, she saw not doubt but absolute belief in her innocence, and absolute despair at his inability to save her. "Mama, Papa, I didn't do it," Amara called out, her voice breaking. "I swear on everything holy, I didn't kill Chidinma. I'm innocent." "We know, my daughter. We know," her mother screamed. "We will fight for you. We won't give up." But everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. A poor family from Enugu had no power to fight a senator. This battle was over before it began. As Amara was let out, she caught Tabena's eye. He stood beside his father, adjusting his cufflinks casually, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He had won, and he knew it. Senator Okoro placed a hand on his son's shoulder, leaning in to whisper something that made Debena chuckle. Then they walked out together, stepping over the spot where Amara's mother had begged for mercy, stepping back into their world of wealth and power and absolute impunity. The doors of Kirikiri maximum security prison closed behind Amara with a deafening clang. She was 21 years old. If she survived, she wouldn't taste freedom again until she was 46. But survive she would. And when she did, the Okoros would learn that some debts can never be erased, some truths can never be buried, and some victims refuse to stay silent. I'm crying. Her mother literally got on her knees and begged the senator to help her innocent daughter, and he looked at her like trash and walked away. This courtroom scene is absolutely heartbreaking. If this moved you to tears, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Comment below. Have you ever watched injustice happen and felt completely powerless? Next chapter shows her brutal prison years where they try to kill her and how she miraculously gets amnesty. This story gets even more intense. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to understand how corruption destroys innocent lives. Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison was hell on earth. Amara learned this within her first hour behind its walls. The overcrowded cells reeked of sweat, urine, and hopelessness. Women packed into spaces meant for half their number, sleeping on thin mats on concrete floors, fighting over every scrap of food, every inch of breathing room. But the physical hardship wasn't what broke most inmates. It was the crushing weight of forgotten humanity, the knowledge that the world outside had moved on without them, that they had become invisible. Amara refused to become invisible. From the very beginning, she spoke out. When human rights workers came to inspect the facility, she pushed her way to the front, telling anyone who would listen about Debena Okoro, about the murder she witnessed, about to frame up. When journalists came to do stories about prison conditions, she volunteered to be interviewed, always steering the conversation back to her case. Senator Okoro's son killed my roommate, she would say, looking directly into the cameras. He murdered Chidinma in cold blood, and his father used his power to frame me for it. I am innocent, and I will keep saying it until someone listens. Debena Okoro is a murderer. The other inmates thought she was crazy. You're making it worse for yourself, they warned her. Powerful people don't like being called out. They'll make you disappear. But Amara didn't care. Silence felt like betrayal. Of Chidinma, of herself, of every person who had ever been crushed by corruption. So she kept talking, kept fighting, kept Debena's name in her mouth like a prayer and a curse. Her parents visited once a month, the only bright spots in her dark existence. Each visit, her mother looked older, more fragile, worn down by grief and the exhausting journey from Enugu to Lagos. Her father brought news from home, though there was rarely good news to share. Their crops had failed. Her younger brother had to drop out of school because they could no longer afford fees. Their small house needed repairs they couldn't make. The guilt Amara felt was almost unbearable, but her parents never blamed her. "Don't carry that weight, my daughter," her father would say, his voice gentle. "This is not your fault. The snake that bit, you will one day be crushed under the right foot." In her second year of imprisonment, Amara's persistence caught someone's attention. Warden Emeka, a stern but fair man who had worked at Kirikiri for 15 years. Unlike many of his corrupt colleagues, Warden Emeka had maintained his integrity despite countless opportunities for enrichment through bribery and extortion. He had been watching Amara. He saw how she helped other inmates learn to read, how she mediated conflicts, how she maintained her dignity despite the degrading conditions. He also heard her repeated accusations against Senator Okoro's son, and something about her consistency, her unwavering story, made him curious. One day, he called her to his office. "Sit down, Amara," he said, gesturing to a chair. It was the first time in 2 years anyone in authority had used her first name instead of her prisoner number. She sat cautiously, unsure what to expect. "I've been listening to your story," he began, leaning back in his chair. "The same story, told the same way, for 2 years straight. Most liars change their stories over time, add details, forget others, but yours never changes." Amara's heart began to race. Was this a trap, or was this hope? It doesn't change because it's true, sir, she said quietly. Every word of it. Warden Emeka studied her face for a long moment. I believe you might be telling the truth, but belief doesn't change verdicts. The system failed you, and there's nothing I can do about that. Amara's shoulders slumped. False hope was crueler than no hope at all. But then the warden's expression hardened with determination. However, I can make sure you stay alive long enough for the truth to matter. What do you mean? I mean that your constant accusations against Senator Okoro's son have become a problem for him. His re-election campaign launches next month, and you're becoming an inconvenient voice that keeps reminding people about that old murder case. Scandals are bad for politicians, even false scandals, especially when the next election is close. Amara felt ice flood her veins. What are you saying? 3 inmates were approached last week. They were offered money and reduced sentences in exchange for causing you to have a fatal accident. One of them is my informant. That's how I know. The room seemed to tilt. Amara gripped the arms of her chair, trying to steady herself. They want to kill me? They already tried to have you killed. The only reason you're still alive is because my informant warned me, and I've been watching you closely. But I can't protect you forever. Amara. Senator Okoro has long arms and deep pockets. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, but they were tears of rage, not fear. So this is how it ends? He murders Chidinma, frames me, steals my life, and now he gets to kill me too? Where's God in all this? Warden Emeka stood and walked to his window, looking out at the prison yard where women move like ghosts through their daily routines. Sometimes God works through patient men, he said quietly. I heard that the new government is planning to grant presidential amnesty to select prisoners, a political move to appear merciful. They're asking wardens to submit files of inmates they believe deserve consideration. Amara's breath caught. Are you saying? I'm saying that I'm going to submit your file with a full report of your case, including the irregularities in your trial, your consistent testimony, and yes, the assassination attempt against you. I can't promise anything. The Amnesty Committee receives thousands of files, but I can give you a chance. For the first time in 2 years, Amara felt something she had thought was dead. Hope. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Warden Emeka turned to face her, and she saw pain in his eyes. Because 20 years ago, my sister was raped by a politician's son. She reported it. They called her a liar, destroyed her reputation, and she hanged herself in shame. I couldn't save her. Maybe I can save you. The next 6 months were the longest of Amara's life. She knew assassins were circling, knew that every meal could be poisoned, every dark corner could hide a knife. Warden Emeka moved her to a different cell and assigned trusted guards to watch her, but the fear was constant. The inmates who'd been paid to kill her didn't give up easily. One night, Amara woke to find one of them standing over her bunk with a shiv made from a sharpened toothbrush. Only the timely arrival of a guard saved her life. But she endured. She survived. And she continued to speak to Bena's name every chance she got, now more than ever, knowing it infuriated him, knowing it reminded the world that he was a murderer even if they had forgotten. Then, on a humid Tuesday morning in her 3rd year of imprisonment, Warden Emeka came to her cell with tears in his eyes and a paper in his hand. Pack your things. Amara, you're going home. She stared at him, not understanding. What? Presidential amnesty. It came through. You're being released immediately. Amara's knees gave out, and she collapsed onto her bunk, sobbing. The other women in her cell gathered around her, some crying with her, others celebrating, all of them understanding that miracles did happen, even in hell. As she walked out of Kirikiri prison 3 days later, clutching a plastic bag with her few possessions, Amara turned back to look at the fortress that held her for 3 years. She thought about the women still inside, the forgotten and the wrongly accused, the victims of a system that served the powerful. She made herself a promise. She would come back for them. But first, she had a senator and his murdered son to destroy. The girl who entered prison had been soft, naive, full of dreams about justice and fairness. The woman who walked out was forged in fire, sharpened by suffering, and absolutely unforgiving. She survived an assassination attempt in prison. The senator tried to have her killed because she wouldn't stop speaking the truth. But a good warden saved her life and got her amnesty. Can you believe this turn of events? If you're relieved she made out alive, smash that like button and subscribe to African Tales by Zion. Drop a comment. Do you think she can actually bring down a powerful senator and his murderous son? Next chapter is where the revenge planning begins with an investigative journalist. You absolutely cannot miss how they trapped Abena into confessing everything on recording. Turn on notifications. Share this story. The hunter is about to become the hunted. The Enugu house of Mara returned to was smaller than she remembered, shabbier, showing a wear of 3 years without resources for proper maintenance. But when her parents saw her walking down the dusty road, all that mattered was she was home. Her mother ran to her, arms outstretched, wailing with joy. Her father followed more slowly, his eyes wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. They held each other in the middle of the road. 3 people who had survived hell and somehow found each other again. My daughter, her mother kept repeating, touching Amara's face as if to confirm she was real. But the reunion was bittersweet. Amara was home, but she was also broken in ways that didn't show. Nightmares plagued her sleep. Loud noises made her flinch. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, expecting assassins or guards. Freedom felt strange, almost uncomfortable after years of rigid prison routine. More than that, she carried a burning rage that wouldn't let her rest. While she struggled to readjust to normal life, Tabena Okoro was living in luxury, his father campaigning for another term, both of them acting as if Chidinma had never existed, as if Amara's destroyed life was just a footnote in their glorious story. That couldn't stand. It wouldn't stand. 2 weeks after her release, Amara received an unexpected visitor. A young man in his early 30s arrived at her door, dressed casually but carrying an expensive camera and recording equipment. His smile was warm, but his eyes were sharp, analytical. Miss Okafor, my name is Yemi Adeyemi. I'm an investigative journalist with the Truth Matters podcast. I've been following your case for over a year. Would you be willing to talk to me? Amara recognized the name. Yemi Adeyemi was known for his fearless exposés of corruption, his interviews that had brought down 2 governors and countless officials. He was relentless, thorough, and most importantly, he had a massive following. She invited him in. Over cups of tea her mother insisted on serving. Amara told her story again, but this time to someone who actually listened, who took notes, who asked intelligent questions, and saw the holes in the prosecution's case that everyone else had ignored or chosen not to see. The evidence against you was circumstantial at best, Yemi said, reviewing his notes. The witnesses were clearly coached. The investigation was rushed. And most tellingly, Tabena Okoro's father made the whole case disappear from public consciousness as quickly as possible. That's not what innocent people do. I told everyone this, Amara said, her voice bitter. For 3 years I screamed the truth. No one cared because I was nobody and he was somebody. Yemi leaned forward, his expression intense. You're not nobody anymore. Amara, you're a survivor of a miscarriage of justice who received presidential amnesty. That makes you news. That makes you dangerous to Senator Okoro, especially now when he's running for re-election. If we do this right, if we tell your story properly and back it up with evidence, we can force people to pay attention. I want more than attention, Amara said quietly. I want justice. I want Abena in prison where he belongs. I want Senator Okoro to pay for what he did, not just me, but for every crime he's ever committed. Can you help me with that? Yemi was silent for a moment, considering. What you're talking about is dangerous. Taking on Senator Okoro isn't like exposing ordinary corruption. He has money, power, connections. He's already tried to have you killed once. If we come at him, he'll come at us harder. I'm not afraid, Amara said. I've already lost everything. What more can he take from me? Your life, your parents' lives. That gave Amara pause, but only for a moment. Then we'll be smart about it. We'll be careful. But we're doing this. I didn't survive prison just to spend the rest of my life hiding from them. A slow smile spread across Yemi's face. I was hoping you'd say that, because I've been working on something. I have sources in Senator Okoro's office, people who are tired of covering for him, who want out but need protection. They've been feeding me information about his corruption, embezzled funds, rigged contracts, bribery schemes. Millions of naira meant for schools and hospitals, stolen and hidden in foreign accounts. Amara's heart began to race. That's incredible, but what does that have to do with proving Tabena killed Chidinma? Everything, Yemi explained, because once we expose Senator Okoro's financial crimes, his entire empire starts to crumble. His political protection disappears. His paid witnesses start to worry about their own skins and become willing to talk. His son stops being untouchable. We don't just prove one crime, we destroy the system that allowed that crime to be covered up. But we still need proof that Tabena killed Chidinma, Amara insisted. We need him to confess or someone who witnessed it to come forward. Then we make him confess. Yemi said simply, "How?" Yemi pulled out a small device from his bag, a sophisticated recording device disguised as a button. With technology and psychology, arrogant people love to brag about getting away with things, especially when they think they're safe. We arrange a meeting, we make Tabena feel secure and superior, and we get him talking. "He'll never meet with me," Amara said. "No, but he might meet with someone else. Someone who approaches him as a potential ally, maybe even a potential partner. Someone who claims to have information about new evidence in the case and offers to help bury it for the right price." Amara understood. You want to set a trap. I want to give him enough rope to hang himself. But it won't be easy and it won't be quick. This kind of operation takes time, planning, and resources. Are you prepared for that? Amara thought about Chidinma, her best friend who would never finish university, never become the doctor she dreamed of being, never grow old. She thought about her parents who had aged a decade in 3 years. She thought about the women still in Kirikiri, serving time for crimes they might not have committed. "I'm prepared," she said firmly. Over the next 4 months, Amara and Yemi worked tirelessly. Yemi's podcast episodes about her case went viral, generating public sympathy and putting pressure on authorities to review the investigation. Meanwhile, they gathered evidence on Senator Okoro's financial crimes, building a comprehensive file with help from whistleblowers inside his organization. But the most delicate operation was a trap for Tabena. Yemi had a colleague, a former journalist named Kunnel who had fallen on hard times and was known in certain circles as someone willing to do questionable work for money. He approached Tabena through intermediaries, claiming he had obtained a real police report from the night of Chidinma's murder, a report that somehow showed Tabena at the scene before Amara arrived. It was a lie, but a believable one. Tabena's paranoia did the rest. They met at an upscale bar in Victoria Island, neutral territory, where Tabena felt comfortable. Kunnel wore the hidden camera, and backup recording devices were placed throughout the area. Amara watched from a van outside, her heart pounding as she listened through headphones. Kunnel played his part perfectly. A struggling journalist willing to sell out for cash, bitter about his career failure. Exactly the type of person Tabena would believe and trust. "So you have the original report?" Tabena asked, sipping expensive whiskey. "Right here," Kunnel said, sliding a folder across the table. It contained a sophisticated forgery they had created. Tabena examined it, his face paling. "How did you get this?" "I have friends in the police archive. The question isn't how I got it. The question is, what's it worth to make sure it disappears forever?" Tabena leaned back, studying Kunnel. "Why should I believe you won't just make copies and come back for more money?" "Because I'm not stupid," Kunnel said. "Senator Okoro has a long memory and longer reach. I want one payoff, and then I want to disappear to Ghana or somewhere far away from Nigerian politics. This is my retirement fund." Tabena relaxed slightly. This was logic he understood. Simple greed. "How much?" 5 million naira. "That's ridiculous. That's what your freedom is worth. Or should I take this to the Truth Matters podcast? I hear that Yemi guy is paying good money for information about you." The mention of Yemi made Tabena's face darken. "That bastard and that bitch Amara have been making my life hell. You'd think she'd be grateful my father didn't finish her off in prison." Kunnel leaned forward, pretending to be interested. "You try to have her killed?" And there it was, the opening they needed. Tabena, feeling safe with a fellow criminal, feeling the whiskey loosening his tongue, feeling the arrogance of someone who had gotten away with murder for years, began to talk. Of course we did. Stupid girl wouldn't shut up. Kept saying my name in every interview. Bad for my father's campaign. We paid some inmates to arrange an accident, but somehow she survived. Probably slept with the warden or something. These poor girls would do anything. So the murder conviction was solid though, right? Colonel asked casually. Tabena laughed. Actually laughed. The murder conviction was a masterpiece. My father's lawyers set it up perfectly. That girl walked in at exactly the wrong time, saw me standing over Chidinma's body. Chidinma, he said, his voice turning bitter, who thought she was too good for me, who kept rejecting me like I was some nobody. I just wanted to talk to her that night, to make her understand we belonged together. But she laughed at me. Laughed. Called me a spoiled child playing at being a man. He took another long drink, his eyes distant. I didn't mean to kill her. The knife was just supposed to scare her, to make her take me seriously. But she kept laughing, and I got angry, and then... He shrugged. It happened. And then that scholarship rat Amara walked in. And what was I supposed to do? Let her destroy my life? My father's career? For some girl who was too stupid to appreciate what I was offering her. Colonel nodded sympathetically while Amara, listening in the van, gripped her seat until her knuckles turned white. She was hearing it. The full confession, recorded in crystal clear audio and video. So Amara really was innocent? Colonel pressed, keeping his voice neutral. Completely, Tabena said with a smirk. Wrong place, wrong time. But she made it easy. Poor nobody, no connections. My father made a few calls, paid a few people, and suddenly she's a jealous murderer. The system works beautifully when you understand how to use it. And the evidence? Planted, obviously. Her print on the knife, her scarf that I grabbed from her room earlier that day. My father's security team is very thorough. They could frame the Pope for murder if they needed to. Colonel whistled appreciatively. That's impressive. So the $5 million? I'll have it transferred tomorrow. But understand this. Tabena leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. If you ever speak about this, if you ever try to come back for more money, if you even think about betraying me, my father will make you disappear. Not arrested. Not tried. Just gone. Do we understand each other? Perfectly, Colonel said, raising his glass, to secrets that stay buried. They clinked glasses, and in that moment, Tabena Okoro sealed his fate. In the van, Amara pulled off her headphones, tears streaming down her face. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of vindication, of rage finally given purpose, of justice about to be served. We got him, Yemi whispered, checking the recording equipment to ensure everything had saved properly. We got everything. Amara wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. Then let's finish this. The next morning, the Truth Matters podcast released an episode titled The Confession. Senator's son admits to murder and frame-up. Within an hour, it had crashed their servers from the sheer number of people trying to listen. Within 3 hours, every major news outlet in Nigeria was covering it. Within 6 hours, hashtag Justice for Amara and hashtag Amara was innocent were trending across social media. The recording went viral. Tabena's voice, clear and proud, admitting to murdering Chidinma, to framing Amara, to attempting to have her killed in prison. His casual arrogance, his complete lack of remorse, his entitled belief that money and power made him untouchable. It all poured out of speakers and headphones across the nation. Nigeria erupted in outrage. Protests formed outside Senator Okoro's mansion, outside the courthouse where Amara had been convicted, outside Kirikiri prison where she had suffered. People carried signs. No one is above the law, and justice for Chidinma, and Amara deserves justice. But Yemi and Amara weren't done. They released a second episode, The Empire Corruption, How Senator Okoro Stole Millions. This time, they presented detailed evidence of embezzlement, including bank statements, forged contracts, testimonies from whistleblowers, and money trails leading to foreign accounts in Dubai and Switzerland. The government had no choice but to act. Public pressure was too intense, the evidence too damning, the outrage too widespread. The president himself ordered a special investigation. Within a week, both Senator Okoro and Tabena were arrested. The images of their arrest played on every television in Nigeria. Senator Okoro, his hands cuffed, no longer his expensive Igbata, but in prison clothes, his face a mask of impotent fury. Tabena, crying now, begging, looking nothing like the arrogant young man who had thought himself untouchable. The confession is out. It went viral. Tabena admitted everything on recording, and now Nigeria is erupting with protests. The senator and his son are arrested. Can you feel that satisfaction? This is what happens when truth refuses to stay buried. If you're celebrating this moment, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion. Comment below, what punishment do Tabena and Senator Okoro deserve? Next chapter is a final courtroom showdown, where both of them will face justice for murder and embezzlement. You need to see how this ends. Hit that notification bell. Share this with everyone who believes truth always wins. The Lagos High Court was packed beyond capacity on the first day of the trial. The same courtroom where Amara had been convicted 3 years earlier now hosted what everyone was calling the trial of the decade. Armed police surrounded the building to control the massive crowds outside. Journalists from around the world filled the gallery, their cameras focused on the defendants. Senator Okoro and Tabena sat in the dock, no longer surrounded by expensive lawyers and sycophants, but by public defenders scrambling to build a case from rubble. Every high-profile attorney in Lagos had refused to take their case, some because of public opinion, others because they knew it was unwinnable. Amara sat in the front row, flanked by her parents. Her mother held her hand tightly, occasionally whispering prayers of gratitude. Her father sat tall, his Bible in his lap, watching the proceedings with the quiet intensity of a man seeing justice delayed finally arriving. Beside them sat Chidinma's parents, flown in from Port Harcourt. Mrs. Ease kept a photograph of her daughter clutched to her chest, tears flowing freely down her face. Mr. Ease's jaw was set hard, his eyes fixed on Tabena with an expression of pure hatred. The prosecution was led by the Attorney General himself, a signal of how seriously the government was taking this case. They needed to prove to Nigerians that the system could work, that the powerful could be held accountable. The evidence was overwhelming. They played the recording of Tabena's confession, and the courtroom sat in stunned silence as his voice filled the space, casual and arrogant as he described murdering Chidinma and framing Amara. Several people gasped when he talked about the assassination attempt in prison. Mrs. Ease collapsed in sobs during the part where he described stabbing her daughter. The prosecution called witness after witness. The original witnesses from Amara's trial, the dormitory girl, the security guard, now recanted their testimonies, admitting they had been paid to lie. Some cried as they apologized to Amara, but she stared at them with cold eyes, remembering the 3 years of her life they had helped steal. Warden Emeka testified about the assassination plot, presenting documentation of payments made to inmates and the suspicious transfers that traced back to accounts connected to Senator Okoro. Yemi presented the financial evidence. Millions of naira embezzled from government contracts meant for schools, hospitals, and roads. He showed photographs of the luxury properties Senator Okoro owned abroad, the expensive cars, the lavish lifestyle impossible to maintain on a senator's salary. Forensic accountants traced money laundering schemes through shell companies. Whistleblowers testified about bribes and rigged contracts. The House of Cards collapsed spectacularly and publicly. When Tabena was called to testify, he looked nothing like the confident young man from the recording. Prison had broken something in him. He was thin, pale, his expensive haircut grown out, his designer clothes replaced with an ill-fitting suit his public defender had provided. Mr. Okoro, the prosecutor began, "Do you deny making the statements captured in the recording played for this court?" Tabena's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, that recording was obtained through deception." "Objection overruled," the judge said sharply. The recording was obtained by a private citizen with no legal obligation to announce recording. "Continue, prosecutor." Tabena swallowed hard. "I was drunk. I didn't know what I was saying." "So you deny killing Chidinma Ease?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. Mr. Okoro answered the question. "I." Tabena's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to kill her. It was an accident. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly to restore order. "So you admit you killed her?" the prosecutor pressed. Tabena looked at his father, sitting in the dock beside him. Senator Okoro stared straight ahead, his face like stone, offering his son nothing. No comfort, no guidance, no support. In this moment, Tabena realized he was completely alone, abandoned by the very man whose power he had relied on his entire life. "Yes," Tabena whispered. "I killed her. And Amara was innocent. We framed her." Mrs. Eves let out a wail that seemed to shake the building. Her husband held her as she sobbed, finally hearing the truth about what happened to their daughter, finally getting the acknowledgement that she had been murdered by a boy who couldn't handle rejection. Amara sat very still, her face composed, but tears ran silently down her cheeks. Vindication tasted like ash. Chidinma was still dead. 3 years of her life were still gone, but at least finally the truth was official. The defense tried to mount a case about temporary insanity, about Tabena's troubled childhood, about how Senator Okoro had pressured his son to be perfect. But it was weak, and everyone knew it. Senator Okoro's trial was equally devastating. The financial evidence was irrefutable. Millions of naira meant for public works had disappeared into his accounts. Schools went without books while he bought yachts. Hospitals lacked medicine while he purchased mansions. One witness, a former aide, described how Senator Okoro had laughed about the stupid girl in prison and how easy it had been to frame her. He said poor people are disposable, the aide testified. He said nobody cares what happens to them because they don't matter. Those words will haunt Senator Okoro forever. They were quoted in every newspaper, every broadcast, becoming the symbol of everything wrong with Nigeria's elite. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The verdict took the jury only 4 hours. Justice Adebayo, a different judge from the one who had convicted Amara, as that judge was now under investigation for corruption, read the verdict in a clear, strong voice. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant Tabena Okoro guilty. On the charges of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder, we find him guilty on all counts. Tabena Okoro, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Tabena collapsed, sobbing. His mother, sitting in the gallery, screamed and had to be restrained by security. The judge continued, turning to Senator Okoro. On multiple counts of embezzlement, money laundering, corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Daniel Okoro guilty on all counts. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years imprisonment without possibility of parole. Additionally, all assets acquired through corrupt means are to be seized and returned to the Nigerian people. Senator Okoro didn't collapse. He stood rigid, his face a mask, but his hands gripped the railing of the dock so hard his knuckles turned white. For the first time in his life, his power had failed him. His money couldn't save him. His connections had abandoned him. He was just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. As the guard prepared to lead them away, Amara stood up. Tabena's eyes met hers across the courtroom, and in that moment, she saw fear, regret, and the terrible understanding of consequences he had never believed would come for him. Chidinma was going to be a doctor, Amara said, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent courtroom. She was going to help people save lives. You took that from the world because your ego couldn't handle rejection. You took 3 years of my life because you were a coward. I hope every day in prison feels like a lifetime. I hope you remember Chidinma's face every time you close your eyes. I hope you never know peace. Tabena opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to beg forgiveness, but Amara had already turned away. He wasn't worth another moment of her attention. As father and son were let out of the courtroom in chains, the room erupted in applause. People cheered, cried, hugged each other. Justice, so rare in Nigeria, had actually been served. Outside the courthouse, Amara stood before a crowd of journalists and cameras. Yemi beside her, her parents behind her, and Chidinma's parents next to her. Today is not a happy day, Amara said into the microphones. Chidinma is still gone. I still lost 3 years of my life. But today is a day when the powerful learn they are not above the law. Today is a day when a poor girl from Enugu proved that truth is stronger than money, that justice can prevail over corruption, that every voice matters, no matter how small. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. This victory is not just mine. It belongs to every person who has been wronged by the powerful and told to be silent. It belongs to every inmate at Kirikiri who is there unjustly. It belongs to every Nigerian who is tired of corruption stealing their future. We can fight back. We can win. We just have to refuse to be silent. The crowd erupted in cheers. Later that evening, Amara stood at Chidinma's grave, a simple stone in a cemetery in Port Harcourt. She laid flowers on the grave and knelt down, touching the cold marble. "I did it, Chi," she whispered. "I kept my promise. He's going to prison forever. They both are. Your name is cleared, and everyone knows you were murdered by a coward who couldn't handle your strength. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you're not here to see it. But I hope, wherever you are, you know that I never gave up. I never stopped fighting for you." A warm breeze rustled the leaves of the tree overhead, and Amara chose to believe it was Chidinma, finally at peace, finally avenged. She stood up, wiping her tears, and walked back to where Yemi and her parents waited. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "What will you do now, my daughter?" her father asked gently. Amara looked back at the courthouse in the distance, then at the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I'm going back to school," she said firmly. "I'm going to finish my law degree. And then I'm going to be the kind of lawyer who fights for people like me, people the system tries to crush. I'm going to make sure that what happened to me and Chidinma doesn't happen to anyone else. Or if it does, they'll have someone to fight for them." Her father smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "That's my daughter." As they walked away from the cemetery, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope, not blind optimism, but the solid, earned hope of someone who has walked through hell and emerged stronger. The senator's son had framed her for murder, tried to destroy her, tried to kill her, but she had survived. She had fought back, and she had won. Some empires deserve to fall. Some truths deserve to be told. Some victims refuse to stay silent. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice prevails. The end. Justice served. Life imprisonment for Tabena. 25 years for Senator Okoro. Amara went from wrongly convicted prisoner to hero, who brought down an entire corrupt empire. If this ending gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe to AfricanTales by Zion for more powerful African stories of justice and triumph. Drop a comment. Which chapter impacted you the most? What's the most satisfying part of this ending? Share this complete story with your family and friends. Someone needs to hear that justice is possible and truth will prevail. Turn on notifications for our next incredible story. We have more tales of love, betrayal, revenge, and African resilience coming your way. The truth always wins in the end. Thank you for watching African Tales by Zion, where every story changes lives. See you in the next one.